Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Real Wisdom Artificial Intelligence. So, today is March 6th. Let's go ahead and get started for today. So, today's dose of Rashmi is unconscious intelligence believes that your thoughts are the existential reality. Wisdom, on the other hand, is having the clarity to know the difference between perceived realities versus the real reality. So I've talked about this in the past in this series, both in terms of clarity from wisdom-led operating model, as well as this is the real, authentic, sustainable human multimodal intelligence that most of the time we have certain thoughts, certain beliefs that have been formed, and we assume that is the reality. However, as is described in the ladder of inference, the observed reality is very different from the perceived reality. We, on the observed realities and based on our existing biases, we select some of the data, and based on that, we draw inferences, and eventually those inferences turn into our core beliefs. And that is the reinforced cycle where we look at everything that we see with that lens, and it re-emphasizes our thoughts, and that's what we see in the external world based on whatever we are thinking. And clarity comes when you are able to understand that there are certain perceived realities, and you're able to really differentiate between what is just a thought process in your head versus what is real in the physical world out there. And this brings me to something that I have talked about in the past in this series, that one of the big differences between the modern Western society and the Western thought process versus the Eastern philosophy is the Rene Descartes' mantra of I think, therefore I am. That is the root of the Western philosophy. And it all starts with the thought. The identity or the self comes based on the thought. And that is what this philosophy is talking about. You are. As a self, you exist because you have thoughts. However, the Eastern philosophy has always maintained that the idea of the self is the awareness where you can pay attention to the thoughts. The awareness generates the thoughts. And that is the big difference between the ancient Eastern philosophy and the modern Western philosophy. And in the context of real wisdom, artificial intelligence, so now coming to the three-layered Rashmi architecture, I've been brainstorming with my AI collaborators on this. And so far, I've been talking about the three-layer Rashmi architecture as a three-layer identity architecture. Based on some brainstorming yesterday, it is turning out to be more like a three-layered attention architecture. So at layer one, we are constantly paying attention to everything external. This is what is happening with the attention economy. We are constantly distracted. We cannot stay focused in terms of our attention, and whatever the news feed is throwing our way or the social media is throwing our way is our thought process that becomes our reality. And that is how most of us live in the modern society, glued to our screens, constantly getting all kinds of distractions, notifications. Layer two, or the equivalent of growth mindset, is a person operating at a layer where they understand that all of these distractions exist, but they are committed to a particular goal or objective. And their signal to noise is very high. And that way they are constantly able to make progress towards that goal, and their attention stays focused on that goal. Layer 3, or the Rashmi level attention mechanism, is, as I talked about yesterday, in the present moment, just direct your attention purely based on the awareness. And if you do that in any moment, there are a plethora of possibilities, regardless of what your past history may be, where you may have come from. And you can make a decision to choose from amongst any of these plethora of possibilities. I have talked about this in the past, that we humans tend to believe in these shared narratives that is our superpower. As Yuval Noah Harari has also brilliantly captured in Sapiens, the superpower is that we can get behind these shared narratives. So for a growth mindset oriented person, the person at layer two, they know their shared narrative, or their narrative is making progress towards their objective. and they are attached to that. That's how they are able to filter out the signal from the noise. However, at layer 3, you can truly decide that, since everything is a narrative, that whatever is in your thoughts is a narrative that you made up, you can either continue to stay focused on the narrative that you have so far used to define your life, or if that narrative is no longer serving you, it's just a narrative. You can divert your attention to something new, and a whole new possibility opens up. You can look at my own example through my career. I used to be in the corporate world, a product and engineering leader for large companies, startups in the networking infrastructure business, building wireless telecommunications networking infrastructure. Then I pivoted and chose to become the product guy and had a great time. I still go by that on LinkedIn. I still believe in uh, product and innovation and great products. And then I started pivoting towards purpose driven innovation and building products which are human and planet centric. And in my latest avatar, I am the founder of Rashmi, and I believe in unlocking the real, authentic, sustainable human multimodal intelligence in the age of AI. And if you think of these different phases of my career, they seem like they seem like three different lifetimes. However, I have willingly decided to pay attention to whatever emerges in the present moment, and based on that, I have been able to navigate all of this, and each day is a journey. Wherever I direct my attention, that future starts to emerge. That is the real power of operating with the Rashmi level intellect that each one of us can access if we can learn to direct our attention based on the awareness that we are. Thank you.